The lake was a sheet of glass that morning, so still it felt like a secret just for me. I remember stepping onto the moist shore with a mug of coffee in one hand and a rolled-up set of dock plans in the other. Cool mist brushed my face. Birdsong drifted across the water, faint but bright, as if cheering me on. For months I had pictured this very moment, finally building a small cedar dock for the cabin my grandfather left me. A place to sit, to fish, to watch sunsets dye the water orange. The idea carried me through long workdays and boring meetings. It felt like claiming a slice of peace that I could touch. I set the coffee on the ground, unrolled the plans, and traced the outline with my finger. 16 feet long. 4 feet wide. Pressure-treated supports. Easy. I had checked the forecast. Clear skies, mild wind, perfect. I dug the first post hole, the earthy scent rising like fresh bread. My thoughts hummed. This dock would mean morning swims and late-night stargazing. It would be the missing piece of the cabin dream. In that moment I could almost feel cool water on my ankles as I dangled my legs off the edge. A faint rumble broke the calm. Tires on gravel. I looked up. A white SUV crawled toward the property line, roof lights flashing amber. The HOA logo, gold lettering, little oak tree, sat proud on the door. My stomach pinched. I knew the HOA existed, but we had never crossed paths. I waved, friendly. Maybe they were just checking roads or reading meters. The SUV stopped short, crunching pebbles. 2 board members stepped out, clipboards in hand. Matching green polos. Serious faces. The taller one called out, "You got a permit for that structure?" Structure. He said it like I was erecting a skyscraper. I spoke in the same calm tone I used with skittish dogs. "Morning. It's just a small dock, sir. On my shoreline." The shorter member peered over his glasses. Shoreline improvements require prior approval. He checked boxes on his paper, pen darting like a hawk. Submit Form C27, pay the assessment, wait 89 days. 89 days? By then winter winds would whip this water into knives. I felt the first spark of irritation, but I kept my voice even. The cabin sits on deeded land. My grandfather owned it, and the shoreline down to the waterline. I'm happy to share documents. The tall one shook his head as if swatting a fly. The lake serves the entire development. Common asset. No private docks. He snapped a photo of the hole I had dug, like it was a crime scene. "Sir," I tried again, "the original deed references riparian rights. I can email it." "No exceptions," he said, ticking another box. "Stop work immediately." The wind picked up, small ripples disturbing the glass. My calm began to fracture. I swallowed and set the shovel aside. "If rights conflict, we can talk. Maybe you misunderstood the plat." The shorter member raised a walkie-talkie. "We'll have county code come verify. Don't touch another tool." County code. Over a shovel and a dream? Heat crept up my neck. Yet I froze, unsure if moving would worsen things. Minutes ticked by, the only sound the lapping water and my heart thudding like a bass drum. The board members spoke quietly near their SUV, eyes darting back at me. Finally they climbed in and drove off, tires spitting gravel. I breathed out, shaky. Maybe they needed to check files. Maybe a simple phone call would clear confusion. I picked up the shovel once more, thought about finishing the post hole. But a chill sat in my gut. I set it down and decided to fetch the deed from the cabin, prove my case quickly. Halfway up the lawn, distant sirens sliced the air. I turned, disbelief prickling my skin. Red and blue lights flickered through pine trunks at the far end of the road. The sound grew, urgent, official, wrong. A patrol car rounded the bend, tires squealing as if chasing a fugitive. Behind it, a second cruiser. They braked near the shoreline, doors flying open. Officers stepped out, hands hovering near holsters, scanning the scene like a bank robbery in progress. My pulse spiked. I raised my empty hands. The first officer called, "We received a trespass and destruction report." "Who's in charge here?" My voice cracked before I steadied it. "This is my cabin, officer. I was digging one post hole for a personal dock. Nothing more." He looked over at the unfinished hole. Fresh dirt, tidy tools. The scene hardly screamed emergency. The second officer lowered his shoulders, confusion replacing alarm. HOA dispatch claimed you were altering communal property without consent. I exhaled slowly, forcing calm into every word. I believe there's a misunderstanding about ownership. I have the deed inside. It states the land, plus the entire lakebed, belong to my parcel. Eyebrows rose. Entire lakebed? The first officer echoed. Yes, sir. It's a natural glacial pocket, deeded to my grandfather before the subdivision existed. The HOA formed later around outer lots. They manage the road and communal park. But the waterway, my family owns it. That's why I chose this cabin over any other piece of earth. The officers exchanged a glance, urgency draining from their posture. One radioed dispatch, voice level. Scene secure. No active threat. Possible civil dispute. They asked for ID. I offered my wallet, hands trembling from a mix of fear and frustration. While they ran checks, I fetched the deed, a brittle packet, edges yellowed. I returned, breath fogging in the crisp air, and laid it across the trunk of the cruiser. The officer traced the legal description. Lot 1, Parcel A, containing X acres land and lakebed. A line in bold, all riparian rights conveyed in full. He whistled low. This is clear as daylight, he murmured. The board member's SUV crept back, slower this time, as if approaching a wild animal. They parked behind the patrol cars, faces flushed. The tall one stepped out, but the officer held up a hand. Sir, I've reviewed the deed. Looks like the lake is privately owned. The board member's jaw wobbled. But the community bylaws can't override a recorded deed, the officer replied, voice firm but polite. He handed the packet back to me. Turning to the board member, he added, unless you folks can show different documentation, it appears the property owner is within his rights. Silence. Only waves gentle against the shore. The board member swallowed, eyes darting as if searching the trees for answers. Will have to consult legal counsel, he stammered. The shorter member avoided my gaze, clipboard clutched like a shield. I felt a swirl of emotions, relief, anger, a twinge of pity, all tangled together. But mostly I felt a pulse of ownership surge inside me. This lake had belonged to my family for generations. No committee, no clipboard, no siren could erase that. I thanked the officers for their time. They nodded and reminded everyone it was a civil matter, not criminal. Then they drove off, leaving the scene quiet again, birds returning to song as if nothing had happened. The board members lingered by their SUV. For a second I thought they might apologize, but they simply climbed in and rolled down the road, tires crunching slower now, maybe weighed down by uncertainty. When the last echo of their engine faded, I stood alone beside the half-dug post hole. The sun peeked through pine branches, warmth brushing my shoulders. My hands still trembled, yet they itched to work. I knelt, sank the shovel back into cool earth, and lifted a scoop. Soil crumbled, falling in gentle thumps. Each thrust of the shovel felt like reclaiming something stolen for an hour. My morning, my peace, my right to shape this shoreline. I drove the first cedar post into the hole, water glimmering beyond. The lake remained calm, indifferent to sirens or clipboards. It had waited for me to claim it. And I was only just beginning. Later that day, after the dust had settled, I sat on the edge of the unfinished dock and stared out at the still water. My hands were blistered, my heart still pounding from everything that had happened. But more than anything, I felt confused. How could they be so sure I didn't have the right, when I held proof in my hands? I decided I needed more than just my grandfather's deed. I needed facts. Not guesses. Not assumptions. I wanted something no one could argue with. So I did what anyone would do when pushed too far. I went digging. Back inside the cabin, I pulled out the old metal lockbox that had sat untouched in the attic for years. I'd always thought it just held personal letters and maybe a few old maps. But that day, it became my lifeline. Inside were stacks of yellowed documents, land surveys, handwritten notes, old maps with ink that had faded almost to ghost marks. At the bottom of the box, I found a legal transfer from decades ago. It clearly stated that not only did the land belong to my grandfather, but so did the lake. The entire thing. From shore to shore. I sat there holding it, stunned. He had bought the whole lake. Not a portion. Not a view. The entire waterway. That's when it clicked. That's why the HOA couldn't find a record. It had never belonged to them in the first place. Still, I didn't stop there. I called the county office the next morning. They pulled up digital property maps. The clerk on the phone was quiet for a moment, then said, looks like that lake isn't classified as shared. That's rare. I asked her to email me everything. She did. I printed every document, highlighted the key lines, drew arrows in bold red ink, and then I prepared a folder with everything: deed copies, maps, letters, the county statement. I wasn't going to argue anymore. I was going to show the truth. I also looked into riparian rights, landowner rights connected to water. Turns out, if you own land touching a water source, and in my case, the entire source, you have full rights to use it reasonably. That includes building a dock. No permits needed. No permission from anyone. It was like finding out someone had locked you out of your own house, only to realize the key was in your pocket the entire time. But what hurt wasn't the legal confusion. It was the way I was treated. No questions. No polite conversation. Just assumptions. Accusations. A call to 911. Over a dock. And it made me wonder, how many other people are out there being pushed around just because someone with a badge or a title says, you can't do that, without actually knowing the law? I didn't want to be one of them. Not now. Not ever again. A few days later, I stood by the water again, but this time everything felt different. The wind still moved across the surface, the trees still swayed gently, but something in me had changed. I wasn't just building a dock anymore. I was reclaiming something that had been mine all along. Not just the lake or the land, but my right to be left in peace. I drove each post into the earth with a new kind of energy. Not anger. Not revenge. Just clarity. I didn't look over my shoulder anymore. I didn't wait for the sound of tires on gravel or the flash of lights. I had the documents. I had the truth. And now I had the calm to finish what I started. Neighbors started noticing. A few stopped by, quietly curious. Most had no idea the lake was privately owned. Some of them had even paid fees to the HOA for lake access for years. I didn't say much. I just let them look at the dock, then pointed to the edge of the cabin where my family's original property line marker still stood. One guy, an older gentleman from 2 lots over, nodded slowly and said, "They've been making up rules for so long, we stopped asking if they were even real." The HOA never came back. No apology. No explanation. Just silence. Maybe they hoped I'd forget. Maybe they hoped everyone would. But I didn't. I couldn't. I had replayed that moment, the sirens, the shouts, the assumption that I was the one in the wrong, too many times to just brush it off. Still, I didn't hold on to bitterness. That lake had seen too many quiet sunsets, too many family memories, too many moments of joy to let anger take root there. Instead, I focused on the work. The dock went up board by board, each one sealed and screwed in with care. I picked a bench for the end, something simple, sturdy. I even added a ladder on the side for early morning swims. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned a soft orange, I sat at the edge with my feet in the water. The dock didn't just feel like wood and nails. It felt like a promise. That I wouldn't be pushed around. That I knew where I stood. That no matter how loud someone yells, the truth still matters. I could have walked away from all of it. I could have given in, waited months for permission I didn't need, accepted someone else's version of my rights. But I didn't. Because deep down, I knew what this place meant. And no HOA form, no clipboard, no flashing lights would ever take that away from me.